Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to HP Hour. Today, I'll be interviewing Dr. Grenita Lathan, who is the interim superintendent for Houston Independent School District, which is the seventh largest school district in the country and the largest school district here in Texas. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Dr. Lathan, congratulations on your new appointment. How was that how was that getting that phone call that you were going to be appointed as the interim superintendent?
Exciting and overwhelming at the same time.
I can imagine.
Massive amount of work that needs to be done here in HISD. And it's been an exciting couple of months, but actually very excited, very motivating to know that the board entrusted in me and believed enough in me to appoint me in the position.
Yeah, I actually watched the video, and I think we're having some people join us. Come on in.
Hi.
Yeah. I actually did watch the video where the board announced your official appointment, and it was very exciting to see that you are the first black female to head up HISD, I think, since in existence. How does that feel to have that title?
It was exciting, and to I guess to be a trailblazer,
But
most importantly, it was just affirmation that if you do what you need to do when you're serving children and serving the adults that have chosen to serve children, that things will work out.
Right, and you're no stranger to serving children. You've been in academia for at least 26 years now. Could you give us a little bit about your background and just a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Started out as a classroom teacher in North Carolina. Had an opportunity in North Carolina to serve as a teacher, assistant principal, and a principal. Opportunity to work in San Diego, California as a chief school improvement officer, managing and supervising all of the elementary schools in the district. Also served as a deputy superintendent. Moved on to a superintendent role in a much smaller district in Illinois, and then came here 3 years ago, and I've served in various capacities here in the district. Chief transformation officer over the lowest performing elementary schools in the district. Then last year moved into the chief academic role, and most recently the interim superintendent role.
Excellent. That's great. And so for our listeners here today, most of them probably have not been a superintendent in their life. So could you tell us a little bit about what a superintendent does and the expectations of you in this role?
My responsibilities here in HISD as a superintendent, interim superintendent, includes oversight of 214,000 students, about 29,000 employees, responsible for developing a budget and presenting it to the board along with my team, for managing the district as it relates to finances, oversight of all of academic achievement for students in the district, hiring, communications, but the day-to-day oversight of running a school district. Liken it to running a corporation, probably for most of your listeners that work for different corporations, the same thing. So it's like the CEO of an educational system.
Wow, and the largest one in Texas. That's pretty impressive. So one thing that Dr. Lathan did not mention that I want to call out is that she got her bachelor's in business education from the one and only North Carolina A&T Aggie Pride, and also that while you were the chief school officer, they credit you for moving 20 schools from improvement needed to meet the requirement. Is that correct?
That is correct. So let me just clarify a little bit. Number one, North Carolina A&T is the #1 HBCU in the country. Let's make sure we are on the record with that for my Prairie View friends here in the area. But yes, my team and I, during the 2015-16 school year, we were able to move a number of schools out of improvement required, and those are considered the lowest performing schools in our school district.
That's awesome. That's great. And so I noticed that the mission, so for NSBE Houston Professionals, actually NSBE, the organization, we have a mission ourselves that we embody, that we try to represent in everything that we do. And our mission is to increase the number of culturally responsible black engineers who excel academically, succeed professionally, and positively impact the community. We are required to remember that as we go into every meeting that we do. And I see the mission for HISD is to equitably educate the whole child so that every student graduates with the tools to reach their full potential. I think that's very powerful and very impactful. What does that mean to you when you hear that mission for HISD?
It means working 24/7. It means ensuring that all 284 of our campuses, that they have the necessary resources they need to meet the needs of our students. We just concluded 2 weeks of graduations for over 40 high schools in our district.
Wow.
And the most exciting piece, of course, is to hear students' names and hear their families cheer and yell for them. But when they cross that stage and I'm shaking those hands, that's the number one thing that's going through my mind is, did we do right by those children?
Right.
So as we think about the mission and vision for HISD, it is to ensure that all schools have what they need,
Right.
and that a zip code does not define a school.
Right.
And that if a student lives in the poorest area of our community or our city, but they still are receiving a world-class education.
Right. And I think about 70% of all the students in HISD are listed as economically disadvantaged. That's quite a bit of the students. What are your plans, or what are the district's plans to try and help those students to make sure that they're not lost and they make it to graduation, they make it to that day where they get to celebrate and they're moving on to go to college?
One of the things is, as it relates to attracting the best principals and teachers to our schools, especially our lowest performing schools, we've placed incentives around staffing incentives as far as recruiting principals and teachers, so we pay them an incentive, so an additional stipend to be on those campuses. We've improved as it relates to providing quality professional development for principals and teachers.
Okay.
We've added additional support positions on campuses, thinking about a counselor or social workers, things that we probably didn't even think about when we were in high school or in elementary or middle school. You always knew the nurse was going to be there if you got sick, or
Right.
there was a counselor there. Well, a majority of our schools in the past several years have not had a nurse full-time or even part-time.
Wow.
A counselor or a librarian. Can you just imagine
Yeah.
not having, I mean, I think about Bluford Library. I don't know if it's still called Bluford,
It is.
going to Bluford, as a college student.
Yeah.
But think about an elementary school not having a
Those
library.
resources, wow.
And so that's one of the goals also, as we think about children from poverty needing access to reading material and literacy, improving their scores. That's been the focus.
Right.
And the mission is making sure every school has what they need. But we have some of the basics
Right.
that we took for granted as students.
Right. And so making sure that every student has what they need, like you said, and speaking to the mission so that they reach their full potential, that requires resources. But we also know that the district is required to make some significant budget cuts. So what are the plans to try to make sure that we're providing the students with what they need while also having to deal with these budget cuts that the district has to face?
Well, we looked at priorities here in our district. For example, we eliminated some travel for professional development, maybe out of state. And so we looked at what we could go to locally, or could we bring speakers in. We've looked at the trainer-trainer model, where we send staff to be trained and then they come back and replicate that for other staff members in the district. There were non-negotiables as we went into the budget priority seasons or budget development season. That, for example, around school safety, we did not cut any police officers, and we know based on the list of things happening in this country, we had to just give on some different things. We had some duplications of services or departmental roles. We cut, and staff members' roles were expanded. So if you had maybe one set of responsibilities, we maybe had to add 5 additional responsibilities to some teams. So we looked at that. We went out for additional grant funds, and so we were able to receive, for example, this past year we received a grant for $45 million over a 3-year period to be able to support us once again around teacher and principal incentives as far as funding, professional development support for our campuses. So we're just looking at other ways to bring in dollars.
Perfect. Awesome. And so one thing that I did notice when I was looking at HISD and transitioning into the NSBE segment of it, and how we can probably have more of an impact, is a number of STEM schools that you guys have. I'm actually not a native of Houston, and I think you aren't as well. And you guys, HISD has what we call magnet schools. Could you tell us a little bit about what is a magnet school and how are they created?
So the magnet schools in our district are created around different themes. We have Montessori magnet schools. We might have a magnet school that's fine arts, and you think about the performing arts. We have STEM magnet schools, so you think about science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEAM. We've added a couple of STEAM campuses, but they're centered around a particular theme. We have what we call separate and unique magnet schools. For example, our health sciences magnet school is #1 in the state. And so students are able to go there based on their interests, thinking about it from a high school standpoint, Or we also have, like, for example, language magnet schools. We have a Mandarin Chinese school, and so that's a magnet school. So it's just a variety of themes, and they're they're distributed across the district, sometimes based on community needs, and then sometimes based on district needs.
Yeah, and so when you mentioned language, I saw that you guys have over 100 different languages that you have to support just across the district, which is mind-blowing, and that you have schools specifically just for that is very impressive. But what I also enjoyed reading was that you guys have at least about 40 STEM magnet schools, which is perfect because that's exactly what we're here to do, is to try and increase the number of culturally responsible Black engineers, so getting them excited about STEM. And so to my knowledge, we currently only have a partnership with 2 of the schools in HISD. And so we would love to expand that as we've discussed previously. But just to tell you a little bit about our pre-college initiative program, and so the purpose of that is to stimulate our youth and make them interested in STEM. How familiar are you with NSBE, and where do you see us fitting into what your goals are for the year?
So in my previous district, we did have a partnership with NSBE where they came in and worked with our middle school students, and it was to expose them to various engineering careers, opportunities, and so they had an opportunity to meet professionals from different corporations, engineers from the community, and it was a positive experience because that was the first time some of our students had been exposed to engineers, especially African American engineers. So that was really powerful. As I see, or where you can fit in, is supporting our campuses. Plus, we have virtual tutors that support our elementary students. So we have actually, it was interesting when we recognized our volunteers about a month or 2 ago. One of our volunteers, she travels Monday through Thursday, and I think she's in Wisconsin or Minnesota throughout the week, but she's one of our tutors, and she's been a tutor I think for 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
So she's never met any of her students except from virtually.
Right.
But she lives here in Houston on the weekends, and she supports us. So that's another way. I know sometimes it's hard to get off jobs, and Saturdays sometimes are devoted to other things, but that's another way that you could partner with us.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like there are a lot of great opportunities for us to get involved, so we'll definitely pick up the torch and start running with it so we can start to engage with HISD. And one thing that I also wanted to mention is that I saw on the website that you guys last year your students received almost $400 million in scholarships, which is very impressive. I know you guys are very proud of that number. And as a part of our chapter, we actually give out scholarships every year. This past year, actually in April, we had our 20th scholarship gala, and we gave away about $22,000 in scholarships. And $5,000 of that went to HISD students, So what can we do to make sure that those numbers are reported so you guys can claim those sponsorships, and how can we further make sure that HISD students are included in that application process?
Okay. So that information would flow through our college and career readiness department.
Okay.
And our chief of strategy and innovation, his office would be the one for the contact, and I can give you that information.
Perfect.
And anytime there's a question or issue about notification to students, if you can't remember whose office, if you send it to communication, our communications chief will get it out to the right chief. So we always hear from different organizations, we have a scholarship and no one has applied. We'll make sure that students will apply. And so that's part of what communications does. They push it out to the schools.
Perfect.
They can even place it on the applications or the links on individual school websites.
Perfect.
But the college and career readiness department handles all of that, but communications will always help.
Okay.
And I'll give you all the information when it's over.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So just last but not least, for those who are listening and want to get more involved in HISD, maybe want to volunteer, looking for opportunities to maybe do some part-time work, who should they reach out to, or how can they get engaged?
So on our district website, under strategic partnerships, we have our VIPS program, which is our volunteer program. They would complete the online application, go through the background check, and then we would definitely reach out to them. Also, information on Read Houston Reads is on the district website. So the best way is to contact the district through the website or call the main number. And the main number, just say, I'm interested in volunteering. They will connect you to the volunteer office. We actually have a volunteer office on site.
Oh, perfect. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lathan, for participating in our first series of Hour with HP. And I look forward to following up with you and continuing to build our partnership.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Thank you.